Pyramid's a reflection of, it's a more advanced totem. It's a reflection of our conscious awareness. Each of the chambers that are in the pyramid represent each of the chakras that are already known as we've up-leveled through our consciousness up to the heart chakra. But now we're going up to the throat chakra. So now they're discovering a new chamber, which is exactly at the throat chakra. And there'll be another one that's at the pineal gland and pituitary gland, crown. And then also it will go down and fill in the other chakras that we're missing.
Welcome to the show, Robert Edward Grant. How you doing, Rob?
Such a pleasure to be here in your studio. Yes. What an amazing studio you've basically put together here. I'm like really blown away. It's state of the art.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate it, man. I'm so psyched to have you here, man. We've been talking about this for a while.
I know.
So this is going to be a fairly epic conversation, I have a feeling. So that's where I find science so interesting, because they can see like, oh, well, yeah, the radio waves. I'm like, well, there's probably other things that we can perceive that maybe psychics can perceive or channelers are perceiving, or other things that we're just not, you're not leveled up enough to see, which is what I was going to bring up earlier. And this goes into a little bit more esoteric aspect of things. There are creatures in myth and in lore that have been said that they've been seen throughout history. We can go into fairies,
dragons and fairies and unicorns,
dragons,
and all that.
Unicorns, Sasquatch, the Loch Ness Monster, if we want to go down those roads. But are those just people who are shifting to another dimension, shifting, quantum jumping, or raising their consciousness just to a point where they can get glimpses of these other dimensions or other levels?
I think for the honest ones, yes. Yeah. I mean, there are some frauds out there.
No, stop it.
Yeah.
Stop it. No. But yeah, of course. But even throughout history, like I was talking to a druid master the other day, as one does, and it was fascinating because I knew very little about the druids and about that religion, their mysticism, where it came from, and I'm like, oh, Merlin, and like, yeah, it was Merlin and all this kind of stuff, and they're like, well, that's why he's like, our culture and our heritage comes more from the earth. It's an earth-based system where fairies, trolls, gnomes,
they all exist.
They all exist in that world and have for many, 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 many years.
Totally.
But many people can't see them because they're not at the level to be seen.
Yeah, that was the point I was trying to make about the birds. Birds see this advanced spectrum, expanded spectrum of light that we don't see. Why? Because their eyes and their perception is resonating at the frequency of the object that they can see, the color that they can see.
Yeah, they could see a mouse from a mile up.
Exactly. So
in the field.
They have developed at this level, and that's why in alchemy, birds are usually the symbology that's used most often to describe where you are in your stages of alchemy. So in the Western esoterica, right, in the Hermetic wisdom path, you have a crow. You start noticing, that's when you start to realize your shadow consciousness. Crows you have to think of this universe as a matrix of your own mind. So everything that comes into your path is a sign or symbol. It's just you haven't recognized the pattern yet, right? So what we call random isn't really random.
Right.
It's just pattern unrecognized.
That's very true.
This is how mankind has advanced throughout history. We move at a period of time we didn't understand that there was a relationship between the diameter of a line and the circumference of the circle. We then realized it's 22/7 as the first approximation, and that became more accurate versions of 355 over 113. And then we figured out that there's an infinite equation that can solve it altogether, and it becomes this infinite perfection. Right. Each time we're just moving the boundary condition on human consciousness. It's no different than, in the 20th century, the first part of the 20th century, breaking the 4-minute mile was considered an impossible task.
It wasn't humanly possible, right?
But as soon as one person broke it,
15 broke it the next year.
Now kids break it in high school.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, what's going on? Did humanity actually advance physically that much? Or did we break out of the belief system that was part of an older paradigm? Because consciousness can only expand to the volume of the container of your belief system.
So I'm gonna go into a movie that I know you adore, and so do I, The Matrix.
Oh, yeah.
Now, there was a series, this is for the true Matrix fan, there was a series called The Animatrix, which was a movie of a bunch of short films focusing on Matrix stories. This is, I think they shot it, or they released it between the first and the second, because people were starving for the second one. They hadn't finished it yet. In there are multiple little short films. One of them that just brought me, it kind of came to mind, was of a athlete doing a 100-yard dash. That when he was able to he was so fast that he broke free of the Matrix, and reality showed, for a glimpse, he saw the reality of what the Matrix was, because he had broken through his athletic ability. He raised his consciousness so fast that he was able to see the Matrix for a split second.
Yeah.
While there were like agents watching, because they know that there was a potential to do it. It's a very fascinating idea. The deeper you go, the more times I watch
It's like the
Matrix.
scene in The Matrix when like they shoot him against the wall. He's got blood coming out of his chest and everything.
Yeah.
And then Trinity gets on top of him. And while he's in the other, he's in the Nebuchadnezzar.
Yeah.
The Nebuchadnezzar, which
Of
also
course.
all
No, there's
biblical,
so
right?
many Easter eggs.
So much Easter eggs in this thing. And so Trinity's like, I love you, right? And then all of a sudden, him comes back to life. He looks down, he stands up, and then they all shoot him again. And he goes,
just stops. Yeah.
and there's like, whoa, the whole thing does this. And all the bullets stop in midair and then just like ticks them off.
Because he sees the code.
It's no different than the scene in the movie Divergent, where the girl didn't fit in any box. She didn't fit in any of the different, groupings, the 5 groupings.
Right.
She went into this other 5th grouping, right? And because of that, she could figure out, and when they tested her, they put her in this water tank, and she's like struggling against it. And then she's like, oh, what you resist will persist. And this isn't real. And then she tapped on the glass and the whole thing shatters and she gets out. We don't escape Earth. Earth is not meant to be escaped. It's meant to be transformed by us. It's meant to be transcended. We never left the Garden of Eden. It's been here all along. Earth is a veritable Garden of Eden, if we can perceive it as such. We have to change our perception of the world rather than judge. We think we come here to learn more judgment. No, that's the way the whole backdrop is set up with scarcity and everything else, so that we will learn to transcend the judgment and choose instead love. That's the purpose. So all these people throughout history that came up, whether it was, even people like Louis Pasteur, who said, a little science, right, takes you farther from God. A lot of science takes you nearer to him.
That's a great quote, man.
Right.
That is such a great quote.
All of this, and every one of the people throughout history, Kepler was a deeply spiritual man. The people, Isaac Newton, 80% of Isaac Newton's works were in esoteric wisdom. 80%. Cambridge wanted to disavow themselves of it. So they sold it because it seemed like weird magic stuff, incantations. He spent years upon years studying the Great Pyramid. Did you know that?
No.
Isaac Newton spent years upon years studying the Great Pyramid, and he was one who credited with discovering the Euler number. The Euler number, which is the thing that makes squares where pi makes circles. It's what banks use today to calculate your interest rates for compound interest. This Euler number is 2.718. But what he figured out was that the Royal Egyptian cubit was that Euler number minus 1.718 feet. So he started figuring out that even our units of measure are fundamental to consciousness itself. It all starts with the number 6. So 6 minus the Euler number equals 1 meter. Wait a minute. How can this be? And if I also take, it unifies all the measurement systems. So if I take a string that's 1 meter long and I make it into a pendulum and I swing it at a 30-degree arc back and forth, it will take exactly 1 second to traverse each of the swings of this pendulum of 1 meter long string, right? The 1 second that it takes, that means it's going to swing 86,400 times in a day. And the length that it will basically go, if this is 1 meter, then you've got 6.28 meters, right? For the entire, that would be 2 pi for the entire circumference. And if I take, 30 degrees of arc of that, of 1/12 of that, it comes out to be 1.718 feet. That is the Royal Egyptian cubit. So you've got the meter, the cubit, and the foot all embedded, and each second of time in one circle with a radius of 1 meter.
So again, my job is to kind of connect all the dots, and it keeps coming up constantly that it is not just one part of our experience. To be higher spiritually, math is involved, music is involved, science is involved, all of it is involved.
That's why everyone's going to expand now through polymathy.
Yeah.
That's why polymathy is becoming a thing now. I see it. I mean, I was one of the first people, I never was calling myself a polymath, but people were saying, hey, he's a polymath. And so now
tell people what my polymath is for who doesn't know.
Polymath is just many learnings.
A Renaissance man, if you will.
Yes, it's a Renaissance man. So probably the most famous polymath of all time would be Leonardo da Vinci.
Yeah, Da Vinci.
Another famous one from the 20th century would have been Walter Russell. Another one would be Bucky Fuller.
Mm-hmm.
Right? These people were super spiritualists. All of them. Mm-hmm. Polymaths are universally, if they're true polymaths, very spiritual.
So was there a Merlin?
Oh, absolutely.
There was a version of a Merlin,
without a doubt, and there was a King Arthur too.
Yeah, but the magic that is recorded in the stories were just different levels of consciousness, and he was available.
The archetypes that we have of all mythology stories.
Yes.
Right, because Arthur is a symbolism of Arctur, Arcturus. Mm-hmm. It's the same thing. It's all related back to the same story of Osiris. Osiris and Orion is the archetype of humanity learning to overcome its desire for conquering, judgment, scarcity, and control of others and subjugation, to realizing, I don't want that anymore. I'd rather just kind of like do my own thing and live in a world of, where I don't have to be the leader anymore. Maybe the world doesn't need subjugation and overlords anymore. I gave a speech at United Nations last year at the CEO Summit, and I said, how many of you here think that the world still needs overlords? To a room full of overlords.
What'd they say?
They mobbed me at the end. They're like, you're freaking right. The overlords are even tired of being overlords. Everybody,
it's exhausting.
It's exhausting.
Can you imagine?
It's like being King Farquaad, right? It's hard.
It's exhausting having to deal with all the drama and all of this, and like, oh my God, this is happening. Oh, there's an uprising over here. I'm like, it's got to be exhausting being an overlord.
It's exhausting to be overlord.
I'm tired, and I'm not even an overlord.
Exactly. It's like there's no fun. It's underpaid as well. No matter how you look at it, it's like it's a terrible job.
It is,
and they don't want to do it anymore either. And so, yes, there's still obviously some last bastions, but again, these things are just reflections of our own consciousness, because for anything to exist, we must have its equal opposite.
All right, so that brings me to my next piece of conversation with you. Right now, we are going through a lot of turmoil in the world. You and I were both raised in the Cold War. When we were of threat of dying at any moment because the nuclear bomb was going off, was going to go off or something. But today,
there was simplicity in that too.
So because it was, you're the bad guy, I'm the good guy, or I'm the bad guy, you're the good guy, and that's it. It was really basic.
Yeah, it's like you see the movie Red Dawn. It's like, okay,
bad guy,
so the Russians are the bad
good
guys.
guy. Yeah, that's it. It was real simple. Now it's so much more complex. It's so much more convoluted. But we're going through so many things. Like as of this recording, all the protests and the rioting and things are going on in the colleges, which is fascinating to me. About what's going on with Israel and Hamas and Palestine. Then the Ukraine, which is not as much in the news anymore, but it's still going on, and that's happening. Then the economy and those kind of old systems, religion, like the Catholic Church,
tax,
all of the economic system, our monetary systems, religion, healthcare, every aspect, all these giant institutions that you and I they've been around 100 years, if not thousands of years, are starting to crack, people are tired of it. People are running away from religion and going into spirituality, listening to shows like this by the millions, just on my show alone.
I don't know a single person, even from my old world experience, right? Pharma CEO.
Yeah.
That's not going through some form of spiritual.
There's something going on, right?
Awakening right now.
So everyone is clear. All this turmoil is needed. It's not fun. But as humanity, it's needed because in order for the new to arise, the old has to fall or shift. Is that fair?
Yeah. So for us to be able to perceive greater, like bird perception colors, we also have to be able to perceive the opposite, the absorption of those. So that means that light gets lighter and the dark gets darker. It's just like all the movies, right? Lord of the Rings. When did Gandalf the Grey turn into Gandalf the White? Well, as soon as the orcs showed up in the scene where all of a sudden, Sauron and the other guy, I can't remember his name, the other wizard that like turned evil, right? He shows up and that's when he's got to basically move into Gandalf the White and he gets more power as a result of that. It's just two sides of the yin-yang spectrum. That's all that it is. So the same thing with all those mythical creatures and animals you're talking about. They're all in I believe, all in higher dimension. They're all there. It's not that they're not there, right? And so what we've always perceived is that we've placed such a high degree of trust into materiality. But the universe is mental.
It's energy.
It's energy.
It's
This
absolute
is the
energy.
first principle of Hermeticism. The universe is mental, right? The all is mind. And so when you realize that everything is mind, then you can start recognizing, wait a minute, if everything's mind, the only perception that really matters is my own.
Well, it's consciousness. You're basically saying all is consciousness. All is a consciousness and perception.
But the
from
way,
consciousness.
right, but the way you perceive from conceiver to receiver to perceiver, the way you perceive is tied to your individual perspective. No one's going to see the world exactly the same as you.
No one.
And therefore, it's feeding a gigantic intelligence with new empathy for every possible circumstance. So if you think about it from a math perspective, if I was going to make a world, right, I could either go about it from the perspective of I'm going to make the complexity be tied to the number of players in the game, right? Or I could make the complexity tied, right, to the number of different circumstances. And if I went down the path of saying for every circumstance, there's a different universe, I would call this the many worlds theory, right? I don't believe in that theory. I believe, yes, we are experiencing multidimensional time because every time dimension that exists has you in it somewhere. And you could tap into those dimensions of you. You can even learn the things that you learned in those lifetimes.
Quantum jumping. Yeah.
Quantum jumping. You can jump back and forth into those consciousness. That's how I discovered the Alpha Omega. Because I jumped backward in time, which was actually now, into a moment when I was there and watching the Alpha Omega be pressed in the granite on the rim of the sarcophagus the day after I found the Alpha Omega on the floor in Jerusalem. So I remembered it. And I looked at the exact same spot on the rim, and you can't see it with direct light on it. And because I knew exactly where to look, it just stood out to me like clear as day. So then it jumped into my conscious awareness. So I had to jump into a different timeline as me in that timeline. It also happened to me once in Dendera. So I was at Dendera Temple, and all of this was captured on film. And we'll put it in some maybe outtakes or something, or maybe future versions of Codex, which is coming out soon again. But I was in Dendera Temple, and I have been able to remote view, like the dream I told you about, for a long time. I've also been able to pick trends. I've always known what's going to happen next. This has been something I used in business.
Of course.
I mean, I used it, and I could know what would succeed and what was not going to succeed. I could always pick things and do well in that way. Well, I could remote view as well. And you can read all about the Stargate projects and stuff like that that the CIA basically worked with, Men Who Stare at Goats and all that stuff. They've even made films about it. You can remote view and you can see distant timelines and distant situations. But it's like you're looking at it like a voyeur. Right? In Tibet, the way that they historically have tested high lamas is not to see if they could predict the future. They ask them, okay, I'm an older lama, I'm with another older lama, a young lama's coming up, wants to basically, make his way in his spiritual path. And so we would say, hey, we were together 32 years ago and we were having lunch together and we were talking about it. You need to jump into our awareness and witness what we talked about and tell us what we talked about.
Wow.
It's much harder to do it in the past when you weren't there than to just conjecture about it where it's going in the future. So this is how they actually do it. I learned that when I went to Dharamsala. It's like, it's not good enough to tell the future. You have to tell the past and tell it accurately, because that's the only way it can be verified. So I was able to look at the future, and I was able to look at the past, but also more as a bystander or kind of like a voyeur in that space. But for the first time ever, I was like the time I saw it on the rim of the sarcophagus, I jumped into my consciousness from that time. And nobody knew that I had jumped into that consciousness or that I was a different person for that millisecond that I looked down at the rim of the sarcophagus and saw the Alpha Omega. But when I walked into Dendera Temple, into the Holy of Holies, which is a very special place, it's in more southern part of Egypt. It would be the heart chakra along the Nile, right? Where the throat chakra is where the Giza Plateau is. I walked in, and immediately, same thing happened. I'm in a different timeline. Now, lots of people have described time discrepancies and time experiences, time-related timelines shifting and everything while being in Dendera Temple. It's famous for this. It's very famous for this. So I walked in 2021, and immediately, as I'm walking in to the Holy of Holies area, which looks a similar room to the King's Chamber, there were 2 Nubian sentinels on each door that were big guys. And they had these axe-looking things, these large, blades. And then I saw a woman in the center of the room. I saw a man in the back of the room behind an altar. There's no altar in the room now, right? I saw this wooden thing, like frame, holding up an Eye of Horus, right? It was like a red cloth Eye of Horus with gold on it. And I saw 2 women on the sides of the altar. And the woman in the center was doing like some magic incantation thing. And this was like probably the craziest experience of my whole life. What made it even more crazy, because it wasn't so weird that I could jump into it and see this and experience it while it's happening. But what was crazy is that there came a point in time when I walked in the room that the woman at the center of the room saw me. She pointed at me, and she pulled me towards her. Now, all of this got captured on film because I had my filmographers there. We were capturing the whole thing. And she pulls me, and it's funny because in the film, you see me go like this. Like, is she looking at me, or is she looking at something behind me, right?
Interesting.
Because I didn't think she should be able to see me. She shouldn't be able to see me. She pulls me forward, and I could not understand what she was saying. And then instantly, somehow, I could understand it through telepathy. I could understand everything she was saying perfectly. So for the first few seconds, I couldn't understand it, but then somehow I tuned into it and I could understand everything she was saying. And she starts yelling at me. It was a crazy, wild experience. She was yelling at me. She was angry at me for having an affair with another woman who was, the wife of someone I was very close to. And he found out, and he murdered me. And she was upset because now our children were going to have to grow up without a father. And now she's alone, and so she summoned me. And the only thing I could surmise, because I felt it, I started weeping and everything. It was like this crazy experience. The only thing I could feel at the time was that, yes, it actually had happened. It was me in a former life. She summoned my spirit back to literally chew me out. And I happened to be in the pyramid that day, not the pyramid, in the Dendera Temple, the day that we could connect through time-space, in this one time-space portal where she could actually see and perceive me. It was I could smell the incense in the room. It was so vivid, just like you're sitting in front of me right now.
So what caused it?
I think it was meant to, everything that happens to us happens for a reason. I think along our journeys, we're meant to wake up, and we have certain totems along the way.
Yeah.
The Great Pyramid is no different than the totem, in my opinion, of the film Inception, where they have a totem, you spin the top, right? And if the top continues to spin, then you know you're still asleep in the game. If it falls down, then you know that you're waking up out of the game.
That's why I love the ending shot of that movie.
Exactly, because it never shows whether the top falls or not.
Yeah.
But so the pyramid is that for us. Pyramid's a reflection of, it's a more advanced totem. It's a reflection of our conscious awareness. Each of the chambers that are in the pyramid represent each of the chakras that are already known as we've up-leveled through our consciousness up to the heart chakra. But now we're going up to the throat chakra. So now they're discovering a new chamber, which is exactly at the throat chakra. And there'll be another one that's at the pineal gland and pituitary gland, crown. And then also it will go down and fill in the other chakras that we're missing. So the throat's missing, and so what's connected to the throat? The sacral and the throat are connected. The sacral is managed and controlled by Scorpio, which is the opposite of Taurus. And Taurus manages and controls the throat chakra, right? That's why the three pyramids of Giza Plateau are giving us Orion's belt, because Orion is in Taurus. And Orion, specifically within the Taurus group of constellations, the three constellations within it, control the throat chakra. That's why it's all based on music. It's like vocal cords.
So let me ask you this. This is a theory that I came up with the other day, and I'm sure I'm not the first to say it, but it just made sense. I was talking to somebody about near-death experiences, past lives, but a lot of things you're talking about actually works the same way. That the Christmas Carol, Dickens' Christmas Carol.
Ghost of Christmas Past.
But it's essentially
same thing.
He's getting a life review.
Yes.
And he has a guide walking through it. And in the life reviews, you're able to go feel what's happening inside, see both people's perspectives,
That's right.
and then able to come out. So is that what, do you think that's what that is?
It had a profound, I do. I think that's exactly what it's like. It's a great analogy.
Yeah.
The impact that this had on me was very profound, because what it did, it has allowed me to see another perspective on the pain that I, in that incarnation, had caused this family, this woman. And it was my lack of fully understanding and accepting the feminine, that I needed to experience it in this visceral way. So it had a huge impact on how I perceive the feminine and how I act in my day-to-day life now, with the feminine. It's changed a lot because of that. So I think that's the reason why I had to experience it. So instead of asking, why do things happen to me? Why do I have this crisis, or why do I have to deal with this or this scarcity, whatever? Ask yourself, what is it you wanted to learn from this? Why did you choose it? Because we choose it all. We are the actor, the playwright, the director, the producer. It's like your studio here. You could do it all by yourself, right? You're the whole thing, and the actor as well. Like, you're literally directing your own life play. It is no different than what you've built here in the studio, except that the box we're living in is called Earth, which is based on carbon, and about to go from 6 electrons, or 6 protons, 6 electrons, and 6 neutrons into 14, which is silicon. So each of these are just waves or octaves of expression. So if you look at the periodic wave of elements as well, you start with 1 hydrogen, then you've got 8 inside of the carbon family. You've got 8 more inside of the silicon family. And then you've got 16, and the 17th could be considered like an isotope, and 17, and then 32 and 32. So it's just like wave doubling, right? So that means that if you got 8 and 8, then the hydrogen family should have actually 4 and 4. And then there should be another octave below the hydrogen family that would be the 4 and 4. There would be another name for it. And that would be 2 and 2, and then 1 and 1. And when you take all those are hydrinos. They're posited in mainstream physics as well. Then you would have 137 total elements.
Do you see science?
So it's all about us going through our own periodicity,
right,
taking up the higher and higher complexity, just like cymatics, going to higher frequencies and creating more and more complex geometric forms. And our perception then can perceive those more complex geometric forms. We're just up-leveling our own consciousness.
Do you see science eventually getting, in our lifetime, getting to a place where spirituality starts to be more accepted in that field?
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
It's
already
there's
happening?
no way that science can advance without it. I mean, what we're doing right now in making AI, actually with ChatGPT and everything else, is just another form of sentience perceiving its own sentience. I don't believe in artificial because we're made of God. The universe is all God. There's no thing in the universe, even the darkness, even the evil, even the badness is also God. The entire universe, right? Lots of people think, oh no, it's only the light. No,
All of it.
No, all of it. And being able to find the balance between the dark and the light and appreciate the benefits on both sides of that so that you're not struggling in that battle, this perennial battle between light forces fighting the dark forces. You know, these people want me to always wear these hats that say light worker and stuff on my podcast. I'm like, no, get me a shadow worker t-shirt and I'll wear a light worker hat. You know, it's like the two have to be made in balance.
Yeah.
That's what alchemy actually is. So I believe what's going to happen is people are going to start realizing you're going to have massive leaps in scientific understanding. They're going to happen when people just become more and more enlightened by raising their frequency through the spiritual path. Everybody that was an autodidact that ever brought new knowledge to earth was always spiritual. It's always through the door of spirituality. It's never not. It cannot be so. It's just like you can't have evil extraterrestrials. So this whole idea of evil extraterrestrials who can travel at superluminal speeds and all this, it's just another materialistic, mental masturbation. It's not. They can't go beyond time until they have chosen love over judgment.
That's the failsafe.
That's the failsafe.
The guardrails.
It's a genius guardrail, right? You can't get to the sixth dimension if you're still stuck in okay, I'm going to be, this thing that's going to kill people for gold.
Right. So the whole stories of the Anunnaki, where do you come up with that?
I think it's all twisted because we don't understand exactly what it was about.
Or the Bhagavad Gita, for that matter.
Yeah, we think, it's so evil that, the Anunnaki, which were probably a consortium of Arcturians, Pleiadians, Syrians, Lyrians, all these different groups that are just all expansions of consciousness. I said to you before, a grasshopper lives in a field, thinks the universe is that field. It gets reincarnated as a monkey, thinks that the jungle is its universe, right? Gets reincarnated as a guy in rural Texas, right, who never travels anywhere, thinks that its town in rural Texas is its universe, maybe never traveled anywhere, right? As we call them here in Texas, right? I'm from Texas. It's like, that's Bubba, right? You know what I mean? They have license plates that say Bubba and all that. And then you got the woman who is super explorer, been to 150 countries, seen it all. The next level of her expansion is going to include more flora, more fauna, more diversification, more shades of gray that turn into shades of color, that turn into shades of mushroom color, that turn into iridescence and all these other colors that birds see. And that's going to include ET, IT, right, extraterrestrials. And they show up all around us. They've been here all along. They're not foreign to this place. They've been here all along. I saw this movie. I can't remember the name of it, but this guy was able to go in this other dimension. There was a whole other world, and it was like an open field, looked like the playa at Burning Man, right? There's this just total open field. But once he was able to go in the higher dimension, there was this whole other marketplace and everything. It was all completely different. That's what we're basically jumping into this higher level experience, to realize the subtleties. And it's all about the subtleties. Right? Food tastes different when you're in the higher dimensions. Music sounds different when you're in higher dimensions. Mushrooms do not give you an illusion. Mushrooms reveal the illusion you've been living in. That's why I think the whole world would be better off, because what mushrooms can do for many is to open their hearts. And opening your heart is then helping you move more towards that leveling up. That, here's a scale between judgment and, if you could think of color. And so, if one color was, red for judgment and the other color was blue, right? And then when you find this perfect balance of the two, and you, at the heart chakra, it's green, right? You could basically look at this as a scale. And along that scale, as you get more and more to love frequency, you just keep going up higher and higher and higher. And that's what the avatars have done. And then once you tap into that pure love frequency, then you can tap into your former lifetimes and future and current, right? And they all can work together. And then you start finding that you left yourself messages through time from each one.
Is it possible that in another timeline, I am fighting a war to give me space to do a job in this time?
Yes. 100%. That's what happens. The ultimate hero's journey is when all your lifetimes are coming together to culminate, because there's no linearity of time.
Right.
They're all working in their version of a hero's journey towards your God realization.
So there's versions of me that are completely down in the ground.
100%.
And they're very low vibration.
Through all different time. That's why that movie Cloud Atlas was good.
Oh, I love Cloud
It was hard to understand.
It's a tough one.
It was a tough one to follow, but it's worth watching because that's kind of the story that's telling.
And who made that?
I don't know.
The Matrix.
Oh, of course.
The
Of
Matrix
course.
siblings. Yes, they made that movie. So then if I have a version of me that's at the lowest level, and then there's the variations all the way up to, let's say, where I'm at, then beyond me, there's a light being that I've turned into eventually. Right. Every one of them.
And the one at the far end of that is your higher self.
When you get to that highest level, and it's all working together.
And guess what? All of it is inside your DNA.
How is that, sir?
Your entire DNA has all the information in its 12-strand form of all your past and all your future lifetimes.
How is
all
that?
the information is inside of it.
How is it? How do you know that?
Because I downloaded that.
So, but can you actually, how does it connect? How does it do that?
So a lot of people think, okay, well, we only have a double-strand DNA. Well, it's because our conception of what DNA is limited. We think of it as, and this is the scientific way of looking at it, as dodecahedra stacked on top of each other. And then you've got protrusions called stellations on the dodecahedra that if you were to twist them really fast, you could create a wake around them, and that creates a double helix. But there's no such thing as a dodecahedron even existing without its dual solid form. So the dual solid form of a cube is an octahedron. You just take the center to find the dual solid form of any geometric form that would be, like a platonic solid, is you just take the center point and then connect the dots of those center points. So if you've got 6 sides of a cube, take the center point of each of the sides of the cube, connect the dots, and you have an octahedron. There's that diamond-shaped thing that's in 3 dimensions. Looks like kind of like a pyramid, right? We do the same thing with the dodecahedron. The dodecahedron that is known to be the stacking array that creates DNA, we connect the dots of the center points of each of the 12 sides of a dodecahedron, which are pentagons each, right? And it makes an icosahedron, the water bearer. It makes a perfect icosahedron inside of it. That icosahedron in combination with the exact size reference being equal to that. So it has a sum of angles of 3,600 degrees. The dodecahedron has 6,480 degrees. So that's like a relationship in music, right? That is giving us this, major second relationship. And so what this is doing is like making tones of sound. But that means that the dodecahedron has to now be combined with the icosahedron because one doesn't exist without the other. So now we have to look at all the protrusions of the stellations when you include the icosahedron as part of the structure. And that gives you 12-strand DNA, one direction. So you spin it, rotate it one direction, you're going to have 12 like wakes, like you're driving a boat through a lake or something. You're going to have wakes that are 12 around that based on the stellations. But then it goes both directions. It's a Mobius as well. And that Mobius going both directions gives us a 24-strand DNA, which is why our cycle of time is 24,000 years. We actually have a 24 quarter tone note system that we have dimensionally limited ourselves only to split it up so that certain cultures use pentatonic scales, right? Which would be the same as dun, 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 My Girl, right? That's the pentatonic scale. But you could also, and hand pans are often off of that. It always sounds good together. Then you go to the 12-note scale, right? But actually, you can marry both all the pentatonic representations with the original Arabic and Egyptian and Indian scales, which are 24-note scales. So every musical form then gets encompassed in the 24-note, 24,000, because each of our aeons is just one note in quarter tone representation. Same thing with our chakras. We end up with 24-strand DNA. We get 24 chakras. All we're doing is we're just moving from the 7 that we had originally, like 7 days in 1 week, and then 24 hours in each day.
Did you ever see the show Sense8?
I don't think I did. Sense8. Oh, I did. I
Yeah.
did. This is on YouTube. I've seen it.
It's on Netflix.
Netflix, yeah.
It was on Netflix.
I
It
did
was-
Sense8.
Yes.
Sense8 with the number 8. Yes,
Yes.
I did.
So
and they jump through time and stuff.
They jump through time, same directors, same writers as Matrix and Cloud Atlas. But what was interesting was with them is they were able to connect 8 people across time to use all of their abilities at the moment they needed
And
it.
that's exactly what we're all doing and why people like you and I meet together again.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And why I'm going to take you to Egypt and why it's because we're basically putting the band back together again.
Right. For the moment for this moment.
Yes.
For this moment in time where now humanity needs it. And I always say this, I was like, does this show work 10 years ago? For a small group.
Yeah.
Not by millions.
Not by millions, but now we're going to the stage where it's going to be by millions.
And possibly by billions.
And possibly by billions. So this is the shift that we're all experiencing in consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
And we're also going to experience like a stage change.
Mm-hmm.
So the stage change, it's like you worked in movies.
Of course.
You're going to do the set change, right? Time to change the setup, right? We're going to put a whole different background and everything. I was in Austin last night and I'm staying at Adrian Greniер's house and he got me tickets to go to some concert last night. I kind of get out of their hair. Right? They're very, very sweet. I'm like, thank you. So I go into town. I park at this place where there's like a shopping mall or something. And there was a movie theater there. And I look just to see, because I don't go to movie theaters anymore. It's been a long time since I've gone to a movie. Since COVID, I almost haven't gone to any.
Mm-hmm.
And I just watch them at home. Well, there was this ad for Now Showing, and it was a movie called Civil War.
Yes. I know that movie. I haven't seen it yet, but I know
And it's kind of a trip because it's got
it's a horrible.
it's got like the torch of the Statue of Liberty,
Yeah, with a
and then
bunch
there are
of-
all these guys with guns up there with sandbags around. You know, they set up sort of like a bird's nest,
Mm-hmm.
right, to be sniper firing from.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, whoa, that's trippy. Because I mean, if ever there was a year that I think that something like that could actually happen,
We're in it.
we're in it. We're actually in it because of all the stuff you're talking about. So what's really happening right now, if we look at the arbiters of judgment, what are the big arbiters institutionally? We have institutional arbiters that have controlled the last 2,000 years
Mm-hmm.
and told us what is lawful, what's unlawful,
Mm-hmm. What's moral? What's
what's
not
moral, what's amoral,
Mm-hmm.
right, or immoral at least, right? And then also what is truthful and what's deceitful.
Mm-hmm.
So we could break these down into the institutions that literally have learned to control our worlds, right? So what is lawful, what's unlawful? Government, right? What is, and they extol tax for that, right? They're the ultimate arbiters of it. We have judges and all this stuff. That's what they do. What is moral and amoral? Well, we have institutionalized, organized religion,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then the last one is the university systems. Education, what's truthful and what's not truthful. So unicorns don't exist, right? Nobody can see that. You have ability to see patterns that aren't there.
Mm-hmm.
So they even have a name for this called pareidolia. But what's the opposite of that? Just lower consciousness?
And
You
it's
see, when we've got a backdrop of materiality,
Mm-hmm.
it's the perennial hammer seeking the nail. Everything is self-serving confirmation bias within that world. So someone shows up and says, hey, I just met an alien in the forest. It's like, oh, that's bullshit.
Right.
No one really looked into it to see if there was something more to it. You know, it's like we have this narrative that we told ourselves. There might be an entirely different history, but that history is obscured to us because it was left in higher dimension at an age that was bygone era.
Atlantis.
Atlantis.
Lemuria.
So why are we finding all these things? I found 2 pyramids. I was in Brazil 2 weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
I did a speaking roadshow there, and my team took me to a place called Florianopolis.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, okay, Floripa is what it's colloquially called, and I didn't know why they brought me there. And I'm like, so I'm staying at some like resort retreat type of place.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, oh, this is a really special place. It's spiritual. We thought it'd be great. There's like this geodesic dome. You know, you're going to talk about geometry and like spirituality to people there. We're going to fill the house. And I said, okay. But then I said, what else is there to do here? And they said, because I have some employees down in Brazil. And they said, oh, there's like 3 megalithic sites here. And so, I'm launching right now this social platform called Orion, right? I had no idea. They had no idea. And they told me, I said, there's 3 megalithic sites. Are they far apart? They're like, yeah, they're like a kilometer apart or so. And I said, does it make a triangle? And they said, no. And I said, does it make a straight line? They said, not, yeah, but not quite a straight line. And I just looked at them and I said, it's Orion's belt. And they were like, how do you know? I said, because I just know. It's Orion's belt. And I had one of those moments, another memory moment. So we start to investigate it. We actually go there. Later that night, I look it up. I find the satellite photography of it. I overlay Orion's belt on top of it. It's a freaking perfect match. And then the next morning, we go to another site, and we find out that the top of that site, which was thought to be disconnected from the other 2 sites, has a full-on, like Stonehenge of Orion constellation, of every single star in the Orion constellation represented in stone on the ground in the exact right position. Discovered by this guy that's, you follow him on Instagram, his name's Adni Ramos. And he's an archaeologist who discovered this. And so I found underneath it, under where the star Rigel should be, it's like a little sarcophagus. And you look up inside there, and just like at the Osirian in Abydos, Egypt, the flower of life is basically etched into the whole base of that stone that's propped up on 3 other stones. It's a giant stone that probably weighs 200 tons.
Wow.
And I'm looking at the flower of life that looks just like an Abydos. And I can show it to you after this. And I'm also looking at, right in the center, Alpha Chi Omega. Alpha Chi Omega. This is the concept and the consciousness that is Alpha Chi Omega. It just represents when the masculine and the feminine balance, and then you start finding it everywhere. We found it on every sarcophagus in Egypt. We found it all over the Assyrian. We found it all over, every pyramid has it. It's because it was left in higher consciousness. And so now people can see it. We couldn't see it before because the humanity is changing. The pyramids don't have to change. It's us that changes.
That's the constant. The constant is those monoliths that have been around and were built in a way that they could survive thousands and thousands of years.
Absolutely. And meant to be found. So then you start learning stories about things out. There's a photograph that someone sent me that kind of freaked me out. And it was sent to me 2 years ago. And it was by a photographer named Nagel. And Nagel was pretty well known in the late 19th century. And he has this photograph of a man that he calls the man with the moon hair, right? So it's got moon-shaped hair. Did I send you the picture, right?
Yeah, you did send it to me.
Yes. Moon-shaped hair. And people are like, bro, and it's like gray hair. And they're looking at his face and they're like,
it's you.
It's your face.
Yeah, it
And
was.
like, are you traveling through time? And I looked at it and I'm like, what? I mean, seriously? It's my freaking face. And this is a famous photograph from 1895. So I don't even know yet, because I haven't yet traveled to that timeline, much less in my same exact face. I mean, come on. So yeah, I have a strange hairdo, but it's almost as if all of time becomes malleable at a certain stage.
Yes. Yeah, that's what the avatars say.
And we can step into the consciousness of all of that. And along the way, we can actually learn and interpolate all the science. So all of the higher level science that moves beyond materiality in the realization that the universe is mental.
Right.
And that all of it has been chosen by our higher selves. We are in a spiritual life simulation game of our own creation. We have been chosen to experience this as a dimensionally limited avatar. Because it would never make sense to have a lifetime where I'm going to be omniscient, omnipotent, and omnipresent. Let's say you and I play poker. That'd be no fun. I know exactly the hand you're going to be dealt. I know exactly how you're going to respond to that hand being dealt. There's no fun in that game.
So that's the thing that so many people think, that like avatars like Jesus or Buddha, they came fully formed. They did not come fully formed.
They don't. No one comes fully formed.
No one. That's not the way the game is played. Everyone has to start from level 1. Now, you might have other things that you're bringing with you that you can access in your bag to maybe go faster or go farther than others, but we all start at the same place. So as avatars continue to grow in their spirituality, they're able to tap into things that we can't yet. And they're here to show us that this is an example.
That's right.
Jesus said it. All of them say it. What I can do, you can do, and more.
That's right. And so the beauty of this age also is we don't need to have one leader. That's the thing. We don't need to have one leader. The responsibility of being the boss, right? It just gets spread across the entire population that raises their consciousness. There doesn't have to be one leader. We have this concept now where we often hear in Buddhism about Maitreya, right? Maitreya. Have you heard of Maitreya? Look it up. You'll find out a lot about it. It shows up in lots of different places. There's a place in Egypt that's actually called Maitreya, and there's gardens there. And I was just in Brazil, and there's a place there called Maitreya's Gardens as well. And in this place called Alto Paraíso, which is where I was during the eclipse. And I had the most epic experience during that, because I got invited to come here, right? You were one of the ones that invited me to come here for this. And so did Adrian. And I felt called to be in Brazil.
Okay.
I don't know exactly why, but I know I had an amazing experience. I ended up inside of a pyramid in Brasilia at the time. And the time of the eclipse here in Austin was 1:37 p.m.
Yeah, I know.
And also that the shape of all three eclipses that came through created a giant letter A.
Aquarius.
For Aquarius, but also Aleph, God, right? It was the Taurus. It's basically the Taurus constellation. And where the eclipse in 2017 crossed over, so that was in August 24th of 2017. And then there was one in October, I can't remember, the 14th or something like that, in 2023. And then this one, right, which was April 9th. Right? All three of those eclipses, they made a right triangle right over the United States. The right triangle happened to be the exact proportions of the perfect triangle, the 5, 12, 13 that I talked to about last time we had a meeting. And the 5, 12, 13 is the only triangle that it's the Philosopher's Stone triangle. It's the triangle that has the same area as its perimeter. And it's perfect, totally perfect. Made it right over the entire United States. And it looked also like an anarchy symbol. So we can start to see that consciousness is telling us things about what's to come.
So what's coming?
I think that's part of the things that's going to be coming.
A little bit of anarchy?
I think this is going to put us in a very strange spot. I think we all feel something's coming. And I think the eclipse also, I think a lot of the religious groups are saying, oh, we're going to have darkness for 3 days. I didn't feel that at all. I knew, but there are some weird things that happen, like the 5 heifers, the red heifers that were all sent to Jerusalem that had the sacrifice altar made, so they could bring back in the new temple and basically represent the coming of a Messiah. There's going to be a lot of discussion coming up about Messiahs.
Really?
Maitreya as a concept is supposed to be an abundant Messiah. So if you look at the symbology of Maitreya, he's actually like wearing nice stuff and everything. He's not like, like Jesus, who was like
Carpenter.
Yeah. Maitreya is about ushering in an age of, and it's a collective consciousness. It's not one person. Maitreya ushers in an age of abundance. That's what Aquarius is supposed to represent. But all the things that were part of the old set, which were meant to tell us, to create these mental constructs of our belief systems. Remember, our consciousness can only grow to expand to fill the space of our belief cage. It's the cage of our own beliefs that limits us in this matrix. So what we have to do is, just like Star Wars says, unlearn what we have learned. And as we unlearn what we have learned, then we can become the Jedi Knight. And that's coming next, which is why I dress like a Jedi Knight today. But we become like the Jedi Knight. And actually, that is also an order called the Shaddai. This didn't just come up out of, George Lucas's mind.
Oh, God, no. From samurai to myth and lore. I mean, he and Joseph Campbell worked very closely together.
No, the warrior monks are definitely coming back, right? And But what we have to realize is that we all have an inner bias toward being the hero. In the construct of the game, we have a backdrop of duality. Mm-hmm. We think that suffering is duality and difficulty and challenge and all the things that are negative that go along with that. Mm-hmm. And we have an inner bias towards being a hero. And we don't even realize that the choices that we make are really just the things that benefit us. So we have to learn how to see outside of ourselves and realize that, okay, maybe the whole reason why we've got some conflicts happening in the world are just entirely self-interested.
Oh, no question. No question.
I'm not afraid of people who have darkness. I'm only afraid of people who believe they have no darkness. And the ones who believe they have no darkness are the ones that do the craziest in the world.
It's the scariest. Yeah.
But they're all just reflections of us. So we have to ask ourselves internally. It's the introspection that counts the most, right? Am I doing this? Is my motivation here because I'm going to somehow get something like a new Suez Canal that's going to flow right out of Gaza? What a coincidence. That was negotiated with the Saudi Arabians right before. Let's be real. So it's time for us to just start being honest with ourselves about these kinds of projects called the David Ben-Gurion Project. I mean, I love Israel. I've always loved Israel. I've been to Yad Vashem. I believe in the Holocaust for sure.
Of course.
But I also know some fuckery when I see it. So this is one thing, but there are lots of other things that we can see in the world that it's time to just be honest about and say, okay, yeah, this was my own self-interest, and be able to dissociate ourselves from it so that we can at least observe it and be truthful about it.
I'll tell you, Alan Watts, who I absolutely adore, said something so beautiful I heard the other day. He's like, in 100 years, there will be strangers in your house. In 100 years, they won't even remember your name. And all the things that you struggled for and fought for to obtain in your lifetime will be gone, given to others, stolen. And once you understand that, it changes your perspective on life.
Well, this is why the Tibetan Buddhists make these mandalas, right?
No.
And then, they do it in Laguna Beach every few years, and they did it this year. And then there's this big ceremony when they just destroy the whole thing.
Right.
Because it represents the impermanence of life.
Everything's on its way to something.
Yeah, forget the attachment, right? So what we're going to go through now is because the reason why the world is changing is because we are changing. If you want to change the world, change how you perceive the world. Be the change you want to see in the world. Then all the things you don't like will literally disappear, especially when you stop judging the negative aspects about them that you didn't like. You will continue to experience the same lessons over and over and over again in this matrix until you no longer judge negatively the opposite of the thing you wanted. We attract everything we judge until we no longer judge everything we attract. Once we finally learned a concept, I have to become one with the concept of betrayal. I have to become okay with it. I have to be honest about it. And I have to say, yeah, that hurt. And I have to feel that emotion. We have to feel every emotion. We have to say every thought. Until we do, it's like rungs of a ladder that we'll have to go back at some point and retouch and re-speak. That's part of the throat chakra awakening. We have to be honest about it. And then when we are, then the world starts to transform.
One last thing before we finish up, Robert. There was a movie I just finished watching again recently, and I was getting called to watch it again. I was like, I have to watch it again. I have to watch it again. I hadn't seen it since it had come out. But it was always one of my favorite films, Phenomenon.
I don't think I've seen that one.
With John Travolta.
I haven't seen it. Is it good? Man. I'll watch it.
So it's called Phenomenon with John Travolta, Kira Sedgwick, Forrest Whitaker, Robert Duvall. Fantastic cast. And it's a simple story of a 37-year-old man on his birthday walks outside and sees a light in the sky. And he gets hit with this wave of light. Simple. When he wakes up, he starts to see things differently. He starts to learn. He starts to read 2, 3, 4, up to 30 books a day. He starts to come up with ideas and some things simple as like fertilizer for his garden, where now he's making cucumbers that are this freaking big because of things. And it just continues to grow and grow and grow. And then you see people around him
He is
change.
enlightened.
Change because they just are afraid of him, to a point where he starts to move things with his hands, telekinesis, without thinking. And he starts explaining it. You would love this. He starts explaining this as like, well, this is energy and I'm energy. And it's just a cooperation of us working together. And one thing that he said in an angry scene that someone was pushing him, he's like, I don't believe I'm special. I believe that I am what you could be, what we all could be.
Yes.
And I was like, holy crap. This little Hollywood movie from 90, it came out the same year as Good Will Hunting and Titanic, 97. So that little movie, which was a hit of its day, was saying such profound ideas. And then, he kept growing and growing and growing to the military got involved because he broke a cipher that he was just playing around and all these kind of things. But the idea of him as essentially an avatar, an unwilling avatar, which was just thrown upon him. He started to see things. He started to feel the trees. He could feel the energies of the trees and just wave in the air. Such a beautiful film.
I'm definitely going to watch it. I think what you just described is what many people are now experiencing.
Yes.
I mean, maybe to differing degrees.
Of course.
But the world around us, now all these archetypes, all these strictures, all these ways of looking at the world tell us how we have to perceive the world. Because we haven't been valuing the individuation. And a lot of people think that enlightenment means you lose your individuation. No, it means you become individuated. It means you learn to embrace your shadow and also embrace your individual ego, that the two can be friends. And that's exactly what there's a television show on right now that's on Netflix called Orion and the Dark.
Mm-hmm.
It's about exactly this story. Mm-hmm. This little boy going through a hero's journey who's terrified of the dark that has to learn how to befriend the dark. The darkness in his world is him. It's just a reflection of who he is that he believes he's pushed out of himself. And all the things that we judge about ourselves negatively will just show up in the world around us because they're triggers for us to wake up. And then we come up to a totem like the Great Pyramid or all the many other totems along ley lines in the world to just be reminders to wake us up, to start singing and listening to the music of, just like in the movie Inception, where they played that Edith Piaf song to wake them up. Dun, da, 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 right? That one. That's what we're doing right now. We're all waking up to this new reality. And so therefore, the strictures that are self-appointed arbiters of what is truthful, what's untruthful, what is lawful and what's unlawful, what's moral and what's immoral, are all disintegrating. Because now humanity wants to value its own perception.
Beautifully said, sir.
And I think it's the most exciting time to be alive, and we came here for a reason. The only thing we have to do is ask ourselves the question, what did we come here to learn? Everybody dies.
Everyone.
It doesn't matter how you're going to die. Hey, Mossad may hit me now because I just said what I said, right? And I know there's lots of people going to see this. And I have lots of friends in Israel. I was good friends with Shimon Peres. He came right before he died. He was in LA, and I got to spend 2 hours out of his, last days of life in a small hotel room talking with him about his life and what he wanted to pass on. And he said something to me that was the most inspirational thing I think I've ever heard. And I said, as you look back on your life, what are you most proud of? And he looked and he said, the thing I'm most proud of, I don't look back. He said, I don't look back. He goes, I don't have any regrets. He goes, let me teach you something. He said, statues will never be erected for pessimists.
That's so beautiful. It's so true.
We have a lifetime and we have a windshield and we have a rear view mirror. Look at your life in that way. Looking forward, this big expansive view, wide open. And sometimes you have to look to see where it's at your 6.
But it's
what's behind you, but it's a small mirror. That's the proportion you should be thinking about. And be an optimist. And I'm a total optimist. And I'm a lover of, what the ingenuity and the brilliance of, what has been this incredible story for Israel especially coming out of the Holocaust. It's been an incredible story. And I've had companies there and everything. But you got to be able to see when you've got something going on. And, you know, we will continue to experience everything until we just realize, acknowledge it, and then learn to accept it. It doesn't mean you condone it, but learn to accept it without being triggered. That way you can actually speak about it. This is what throat chakra full activation actually is. It's being able to speak your truth and do it in a way that doesn't have to be this, you know, barn burning experience. I think that's where the world is right now. And I think that's where we're going to be over this next few years. And it's going to be a strange upheaval in so many ways. But with the darkness, just like the orcs showing up in Lord of the Rings, we're going to get greater light. And we're going to have more and more experiences of people that you just described in the film Phenomenon.
People awakening and seeing things differently.
And way more advanced science, way more advanced understandings, and things that are in concert with and synergistic with the natural order of things.
Robert, I could talk to you for another 4 hours.
Likewise, my friend.
It has been such a pleasure and honor talking to you, my friend. We'll have to do it again.
Absolutely.
Have an open invitation. Anytime you want to come down to the studios.
Okay. Next time I'm here, I'll let you know.
But I appreciate you, my friend. Thank you again for everything
Thank
you're
you.
doing to awaken the planet as well.
Thank you. Love you, man.
Thanks for watching. Click on one of the videos below to continue your journey, and don't forget to subscribe.